Denver's 2021 season is officially in the books, but moves impacting the 2022 season and beyond, those are just beginning. This week we'll look at George Paton's first head coach hire as GM. We're going to crunch some numbers from Denver's most impressive performances in 2021, and we'll take a peek at the Broncos' 2022 opponents and what a climb back to the postseason will entail. Welcome into Broncos Weekend, everybody. I'm Matt Boyer alongside Alexis Perry and the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. Guys, the offseason, usually a time when you can catch your breath, decompress a little bit. Not the case if you are George Paton. Less than 24 hours after the season finale against KC, Fangio and Paton agree that they are going to be parting ways, the Broncos and head coach Vic Fangio parting ways, officially greenlighting now George Paton's first head coaching hire as GM. So, Steve, before we get to that, Paton's decision to part ways with Vic Fangio. What do you think? Do you think this was the right move at this time? It seems like Broncos country, in large part, was in favor.
Yeah, now I'm never in favor of a person having to lose their job,
right.
But I do think this was the right time for it. Fangio may have even felt the same way. Now, I'm a firm believer in stability and having that continuity from year to year. But, man, the fans, they had gotten to a point to where they were kind of fed up with the losing. And I think that having the seasons that we had prior to Vic Fangio coming, that didn't help. Having the two losing seasons with Coach Vance Joseph, that didn't help any. And then, the players, after a while of not winning, they start to lose faith, and it just creates a entire effect of negativity. So I think it's about time. I'm sure Coach Fangio is still going to be a great coach in the NFL. Hopefully he'll get another shot at being a head coach. But, yeah, I definitely think it was the right time.
This is the spotlight now, Steve, turns to George Paton. Alexis, you had a chance to talk with George Paton right after that decision was made. What was your biggest takeaway from what George had to say, and how do you see this process playing out going forward?
Yeah, well, my biggest takeaway, I think, was that his approach for this coaching search, just like every position that he hires, drafts, signs, is going to be extensive and thorough. He has already cast a wide net, 10 candidates, and he is just looking for the perfect fit for this Denver Broncos team and somebody who can really maximize the potential of this young core group of players. Now, I did ask him if this high-flying, high-scoring, quarterback-driven league would really influence his decision when it comes to hiring a new head coach, and he said, no, not really. I'm not really looking for somebody who's an offensive or defensive-minded guy. He is looking for a strong leader, somebody who can empower and motivate these players day in and day out. He did mention if they were a play caller on either side of the ball, that would be a bonus, of course, but that's not a requirement for him. So I really think the fact that he is so open-minded heading into this search will be really beneficial. We can all tell by the candidates already that they vary so much from background to experience and strength. All in all, I just think George Paton has his head screwed on perfectly, and he's going to go through this process and get the Broncos the best fit.
You mentioned the net is wide. 6 candidates on the offensive side of the ball, 4 on the defensive side of the ball, 10 total. We compiled the list via media reports. A couple names stand out here, though, guys. A few with local ties like Eric Bieniemy, Brian Callahan. Kellen Moore played his college ball at Boise State. But one of those guys, Steve, only one, has head coaching experience, and that is Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn, the most reported name that we've seen throughout these media reports. So when you look at that possibility, what do you think about that possibility, and how do you think the Broncos will view his candidacy if interviewed next week?
Yeah, I mean, I like the possibility. I like that he has previous head coaching experience. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's coached the Legion of Boom, some ballers. So he knows how to handle high-profile players. He knows how to get the buy-in on them. Now, I don't know Dan Quinn personally, but he seems to be a really good leader of men, and that's one of the things that George Paton is looking for. However, as a head coach, he has a 46-44 record, and we do have to take that into account. He's been in a head coaching position before, had some success. He went to the Super Bowl, didn't win. They were up. I thought they were going to win.
But everybody remembers the score.
But it didn't happen. But I'm sure he's probably at the top of a lot of teams' lists this offseason because of the experience that he has.
AP, a couple of candidates with local ties we mentioned, including former Buff,
yes,
Eric Bieniemy. So
EB.
in terms of what the Broncos are looking for as far as a leader, how does his skill set fit with what you think George Paton might be looking for?
Well, George Paton, he knows Eric Bieniemy well from their time in Minnesota together. So it's always nice to keep that in mind in terms of relationships that he already has. And George Paton already knows what a great leader he is on and off the field. But in terms of fit for this position, I don't think there's any doubt that having the man that has helped the Chiefs finish 1st, 5th, 6th, and 4th in scoring over the past 4 seasons would be incredibly beneficial for the Broncos. I know some people say the biggest knock on him is the fact that Andy Reid is the play caller for that offense in Kansas City. However, Patrick Mahomes has credited Eric Bieniemy as the person who makes sure that he has all the tools necessary to be comfortable in the pocket week in and week out. So I think we should also mention too Andy Reid's success over the Denver Broncos over the past 13 meetings. Getting someone from that coaching tree could be the key for this Broncos team to finally dethrone the Chiefs. But all in all, I think the good news for Broncos country is no matter what happens with Eric Bieniemy here in Denver, I think he will be out of the AFC West by the end of this offseason, or at least the end of over the next few weeks, given the fact that he is obviously a candidate for a number of other positions. And I just don't think there's any way he gets through this offseason without becoming a head coach somewhere in this league.
Seems like this is the year for him, absolutely.
Yeah.
Bieniemy and Quinn among those that can't be interviewed until next week, but the Broncos reportedly have 3 interviews set up for this week. 3 of them already, one of them has already taken place. Aaron Glenn, Steve, let's take a look at these 3 candidates expected to get interviews. Aaron Glenn in Detroit, Nathaniel Hackett, and Luke Getsy in Green Bay. Steve, typically the NFL's worst statistical defense, they don't get many head coaching hires, but Aaron Glenn was an incredible defensive backs coach in New Orleans. Guys like Marshawn Lattimore, Malcolm Jenkins came up under him. Glenn is a guy who you are familiar with going back to your playing days. What are his biggest strengths as a coach, and what do you think makes him an appealing candidate?
Well, first of all, yes, he was a really great player, great cornerback. He was a little undersized, but he made up for that with his speed and quickness and all that. What Aaron Glenn also was a student of the game as a player, and I'm sure that was an easy transition for him to go into coaching because he was so used to watching film and breaking down guys, and I can imagine over the years his experience down with New Orleans Saints and now with the Detroit Lions. That's just gotten more and more. And I've seen some videos of him just getting the guys pumped up.
Got that energy.
Oh, man, got the great energy. And I think players respond well to that. So I'm kind of pulling for him, hoping that he's able to get a head coaching job somewhere. If it's in Denver, I'm not sure if it'll be here or not, but I'm really pulling for him.
A lot of those players in Detroit have raved about Aaron Glenn whenever they get into the press and speak his praises. AP, Denver will finish the first wave of interviews in Green Bay, interviewing 2 candidates in Nathaniel Hackett and Luke Getsy, reportedly. Most fans see the Packers offense and automatically think Aaron Rodgers, obviously.
Don't think that.
Yeah.
Don't think that.
When you have a quarterback like Rodgers, though, or Mahomes, like with Bieniemy, how difficult does the evaluation of that offense become in trying to separate the player from the system?
Well, there's no doubt that does make things a little bit more challenging, but I think that's why Broncos country should be happy that we have George Paton here, because he really takes the time to really deep dive into each of these candidates. And I think when he interviews these guys, today and tomorrow, I think a question for both of them is, what percentage of your playbook gets tossed when Jordan Love is in the game? Because it has to be a pretty good percentage of it, because there are really only certain plays that a guy like Aaron Rodgers can run. There's no doubt that any offense is considerably better when you have a perennial MVP candidate under center. But like I said, George Paton is not going to get duped by any of that. So I think he has the, mind about him to be able to decipher if an offense is genius in itself or if it is because of Aaron Rodgers. So I think another key question really, is Aaron Rodgers coming with you? Maybe he might ask each guy that, but I think we can all agree that that is not a lock. The guy is still under contract, Broncos country. So don't expect, if Nathaniel Hackett gets the job, do not expect Aaron Rodgers to be in his suitcase, I guess.
Rodgers or not, Hackett might be the most interesting coach in this coaching cycle, according to a story from our friend Nikki Jabvala at the Washington Post. Hackett was a neurobiology major at UC Davis who taught hip-hop dance classes on the side. So if you want exciting storylines here with this head coaching search, Hackett might be the front runner going forward.
Can't wait to see the post-game videos of him in the locker room after a win.
Busted move. Let's do this.
We've got to take a quick break, but when we come back on Broncos Weekend, what will Denver's new coaching staff be assessing when they arrive in the Mile High City? We're taking a look back at the 2021 season, the outstanding performers, and what it could all mean for 2022. Welcome back to Broncos Weekend, everybody. Okay, guys, now that the 2021 season, the dust is settled, the stats are in the stat book, so let's look at some of those statistical leaders, some of the big storylines from this season. And obviously, we have to start with the storyline, the headline that dominated the year. It was the quarterback battle. The two quarterbacks, Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Locke. Let's look at their 2021 seasons. AP, Teddy clearly won the quarterback battle out of camp, but then struggled to find consistency while battling injuries. When you look back on this 2021 season, how would you evaluate his play as a whole?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, when he was healthy, Teddy was Teddy. The Broncos knew exactly what they were getting in Teddy Bridgewater, a steady, serviceable, ball-protecting quarterback who is great in the locker room, and that is exactly what they got. Teddy, he never really lit the world on fire with gaudy numbers. However, in the AFC West, all the other quarterbacks in this division are lighting the world on fire with gaudy numbers. So, unfortunately, the Broncos were at the bottom of that list when it came to, star power quarterbacks here in this division. I just think there were enough problems on the offensive side of the ball that no matter what kind of season Teddy Bridgewater had, it just wasn't going to be enough to get this team over the hump.
Steve, George Paton made mention of the fact that Drew, unlike Teddy, is under contract for the 2022 season. He only started 3 games. What did you learn about where he is at as a player right now in his career?
Well, I think Drew Locke being the position that he was in at the start of the season, being basically demoted from a starter to a backup, I think he did a lot of maturing throughout the season. And when he came in and played, I know in a lot of earlier games, he didn't do very well. But when he knew he had to start near the end of the season, I thought that he played much better. Now, I don't think he is where he wants to be in his career right now. Obviously he wants to be a starter, and as a starter, you have to play at a certain level. I'm hoping that the next coach that comes in will have the offensive pieces and the masterminds, the quarterback coach in place to where they can spend a ton of time with Drew. Again, I think he has a bright future in the NFL, but I think he just needs to be under the right tutelage.
I think if the Broncos are going to bring in an offensive mind, Steve, like you mentioned, the pieces are there that helped out this offense. And a couple of those guys we're going to mention right now, Melvin Gordon and Courtland Sutton, the statistical leaders as far as yardage when it comes to rushing and receiving respectively, AP. Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, the exact same number of rushes this season, 203, and they were separated by only 15 rushing yards. So I think the answer is pretty clear, but how successful did you think Denver's run game was this season, splitting carries between the two guys?
Hey, Pat Shurmur said that they were going to split carries and that they were co-starters, and that they were. This two-headed monster, they did not just have a successful season. They had an historic one as they both topped 900 yards on the season to become the first running back duo since 2011 to both pass the 900-yard mark. I also need to point out that Javonte Williams forced 63 missed tackles this season, the second most by a rookie since 2006. And wait, he did it with 39 fewer carries. This guy is an absolute stud. So is Melvin Gordon, and I just hate to imagine what it would have actually looked like if the Broncos utilized those two guys more in the first half of the season like they did in the second half of the season. For me, it was so clear that the Broncos' ground game was their brightest spot on offense this year. And, I even loved seeing a guy like Mike Boone in a really small sample size. He's kind of a fast scat back. He's great in passing patterns, and he's great at getting outside the defense. And I just loved what he showed in contrast to Javonte and Melvin. And so I think George Paton has found something in Javonte. He's found something in Mike Boone. And as a whole, this running backs room is something that you can look forward to in 2022, especially with a new system.
Broncos country anxiously awaiting the next edition, the 2.0 version of Angry Runs by Javonte Williams next year. Steve, Courtland Sutton led the team in targets and yards, but 45 yards a game, Steve. That's not gonna cut it here in the NFL. What do you think that the Broncos want to do next season to take advantage of guys like Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Noah Fant?
Well, first off,
Tim Patrick too as well. Can't forget about Tim Patrick.
Not.
Right, and I'm not going to put this all on the quarterback, but the first thing is going to be you're going to have a quarterback that has the confidence to throw the ball to those guys even when they may look like they're covered because first off, I don't think anybody can cover Jerry Jeudy man-to-man. We've talked about this before. I just don't think it can happen. Nobody can cover him man-to-man.
Right.
And then Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton, although they may be covered, they may look like they're covered, they can go up and get the ball. They can make plays. They just need somebody who really has the confidence to give them the opportunity and get the ball to them. So I think that's the number one thing to help those guys out is having a quarterback that truly believes that they can make plays is going to get them the ball.
The offense clearly needing some work here as we move into 2022, but the defense, guys, in 2021, pretty good as far as being a top 10 scoring defense. Let's take a look at some of the defensive standouts this season. Shelby Harris and Justin Simmons. AP, in your interview with George Paton, he specifically mentioned Denver needs to be better in the pass rush. That said, Denver still a top 10 defense. How would you assess the way the Broncos front four was able to play this year?
Yeah, the Broncos were a top defense. However, they were in the bottom half of the league in sacks, finishing 19th with just 36. Compare that to teams in the top 10, all had over 42 sacks this year, and 7 of those 10 teams are gearing up for the playoffs right now. The Denver D, they were 28th when it came to stopping the opposition on third down. And finally, when this defense didn't allow a lot of points, they also didn't create enough turnovers, and they finished in the lower half of the league in that stat as well. So while none of these stats and rankings really point out if they were good or bad in terms of the pass rush, we all know that the front four and the secondary, those things are tied together and vice versa. So to me, these stats and rankings collectively suggest that the Broncos just didn't get to the quarterback enough, specifically in really key situations. So at the end of the day, it's just really clear that the front four, they could have done more.
Shelby Harris has 6 sacks, the fewest by a Broncos team leader in sacks since 2010. DJ Williams finished that year with 5.5 to lead all defenders. Broncos went 4-12 that season, and then 4 months later, they draft Von Miller.
Von Miller, yeah.
And the Broncos go 7-10 this season, and who knows what they'll do with the 9th overall pick.
Right, and only the leading sacker on the team comes from the edge, except for in L.A. with Aaron Donald.
True.
Steve, in the secondary now, AP just mentioned it, the secondary and the front four are tied together. Justin Simmons didn't get a Pro Bowl nod. Probably should have, and he probably will get the call if Kevin Byard doesn't go to the Pro Bowl. Simmons is a first alternate, but he had all-pro numbers, for sure. Where did he impress you the most this season?
He impressed me. I thought he was more physical this year than he'd been in years past. He's always been a physical guy, but he stepped it up another level. Still had the great hands. I wish I had those type of hands, man. I can imagine how many picks I would have had if I would have had Justin Simmons' hands.
So many just flew right through.
Yes. And he was still the great leader that he's always been. Now, obviously, we wanted the record to be better, but in terms of his individual play, I think he feels pretty good about that. Obviously, he wanted to win more games, and hopefully that'll come.
Still cannot believe he's not a Pro Bowler.
I know. Yeah. Simmons tied his career high with 5 picks this season, Steve, leaving him, he's at 21 for his career, leaving him 3 shy of Steve Atwater's career total. Is he hitting it in 2022?
Oh, man, come on. He might get that in the first game. Yeah, he's getting it.
He's getting it in 2022, Broncos country. We've got to take a quick break, but when we come back on Broncos Weekend, George Paton and his staff are about to log some serious miles searching for the Broncos' next head coach. So what will the next 2 weeks look like for Denver's GM? Alexis is getting all the details from 9 News Broncos Insider Mike Klis when we come back. Welcome back to Broncos Weekend, everybody. As George Paton crosses the 1-year mark with this Denver Broncos franchise, he begins his search for the Denver Broncos' 18th head coach in franchise history. So, when can Broncos country expect an announcement, and what will that process look like these next couple of weeks? Alexis is getting some answers from our friend, 9 News Broncos Insider Mike Klis.
Thanks so much, Matt. Mike, before we get into the coaching search, first I have to get your thoughts on this 2021 season as a whole. It was filled with so many ups and downs, but how would you assess the product the Broncos put on the field this year?
Well, I ended up disappointed. After that 3-0 start, it was really promising. And really, you include that with the preseason. I mean, they were whipping everybody in the preseason. They start 3-0 against the Cupcakes, part of their schedule. And then they were only, 3-10 the rest of the way. They had the big win against the Dallas Cowboys, big win against the Chargers, so promising then. Teddy Bridgewater had trouble staying healthy and wasn't healthy at the end. The defense also had a lot of injuries. There was COVID that hurt the team.
Right.
There were a lot of reasons that the team declined. That 4-game losing streak to end it kind of put a big damper on things.
Well, in an effort to improve that, the Broncos have decided to part ways with Vic Fangio. What was your initial reaction to the news Sunday morning?
Yeah, I thought it had to happen. I think 2 weeks before the end of the season, I think George Paton was leaning toward keeping Vic and getting a new offensive coaching staff and getting him a new quarterback. That's how he was leaning. But then the last 2 games, even with COVID, when they got blown out by the Chargers, and they fought so hard, even though they were undermanned against the Chiefs, but still they couldn't get it done at the end. It turned out to be kind of a microcosm of the whole Vic Fangio era. There were so many games where they played hard, they had great effort, they just didn't have enough to finish it off. And so they decided to make a move. I think Broncos country wanted to move. I think that was a factor. But in the end, I think the move was kind of obvious to everyone that they needed a change. They needed new energy in that building.
Well, the coaching search is already underway. What is the latest on the candidates and this process so far?
They've got 10, and that's going to be the final list, unless maybe someone drops out. You know, one of these playoff coaches next week drops out, and they're going for the AFC championship, or they want to make sure that they have full attention. But otherwise, it's a pretty good 10-person list. 6 offensive coaches, 4 defensive coaches. Aaron Glenn was first up with Detroit. Met with them, and then Friday, the quarterback coach of the Green Bay Packers, Luke Getsy. Saturday with Nathaniel Hackett, the offensive coordinator, which went from a disguised attempt to bring in Aaron Rodgers to Denver to an overt attempt. They're hardly disguised that Aaron Rodgers is their primary target. And wouldn't that be something if they got that package deal?
Exactly.
But they have some others. Dan Quinn, everyone seems to think, is the leader in the clubhouse. He's been a head coach before. He's had a relationship with George Paton. And it's very important that George works closely with the head coach. He likes to do that. So that's why Dan Quinn, I think, is the odds-on favorite. I like the other guy on the Cowboys that they're interviewing, Kellen Moore, 33-year-old offensive coordinator. Cowboys are number 1 in scoring, number 1 in yards. It's there to be had. Go ahead and take a look at Kellen Moore. Then Brian Callahan is interesting too, because he's got his roots here in Denver. He cut his teeth from 2010 to 2015, and that Bengal offense is very, very explosive.
Okay, is there one of these 10 guys that you think would be a perfect fit for the Broncos?
I want offense.
Okay.
I don't think I'm going to get my desire there.
George isn't going to call you?
I think George is going to go with Dan Quinn. That would be my guess.
Okay.
That seems like it's the fit for him.
Okay.
And he is picking it. But Kellen Moore, Nathaniel Hackett, Brian Callahan, those are the 3 that I think they should look hard at.
All right, well, the new head coach, his system and schemes will obviously play a big factor in the upcoming draft, free agency period, et cetera, et cetera. But is there one position that you can think of right now, maybe outside of quarterback, given the fact that that's kind of the obvious, that this team absolutely needs to prioritize this offseason?
I think edge rusher. You know, they lost Vaughn. They traded away Vaughn. They got extra draft picks for Vaughn. Now go get the next Vaughn if you can. That's going to be hard, probably impossible. But at number 9, I think edge rusher, whatever the best edge rusher there at number 9 is what they need. There's 4 spots. When you're picking in the top 10, there's really 4 spots that you really prioritize. Quarterback is number 1. And from what I understand, I'm no draftnik or mockster or anything, but from what I understand, there's no quarterback worthy of the number 9 overall pick. Then you look at left tackle, you look at cornerback. They did that last year with Pat Surtain, and then edge rusher. And I think it's time to look at edge rusher here. Devin Lloyd of Utah.
Yeah, I was going to say that Ute product, he seems pretty good.
He's the one that, George was going to go take a look at him in the Rose Bowl, and then he had to cancel that trip.
Right.
But I think that would be one candidate in that number 9 slot.
All right, Mike, I'm sure we'll catch up with you a number of times over the offseason. But for daily updates from Mike, just be sure to follow him on Twitter at Mike Klis. Matt, let's send it back to you.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Mike. Okay, Steve. Usually this is the point in the show where we do Steve's keys to the game, but without a game, we're going to look at Steve's key games in 2022, all right? We're going to take a look at the opponents for the Denver Broncos in 2022. Those have already been set, and Steve, this schedule, it's a bit of a mixed bag here. Denver's going to face the entire AFC South and NFC West in 22. When you look at that slate, what do you see? What do you got?
I see a tough schedule. I see, really 4 teams where I can say, all right, it's a good chance that we can beat these guys. The other one, it's going to be game. It's going to be, now I say toss-ups now, but I'm sure when we get to the game, I'm going to pick the Broncos. We got to get the dub in the moment. Our division is tough enough. The 6 games in our division, that's a feat in itself. So our guys got reason to continue to work hard in the offseason.
A lot of intriguing options, too, for Broncos country to take their voices on the road, be heard. A couple trips to Southern California, which we know Broncos country very active in when it comes to rooting on their team. So a lot to look forward to here in 2022. That'll do it for us today on Broncos Weekend. Special thanks to the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. I'm Matt Boyer. So long, Broncos country. We will see you next time.